Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born, and what was your given name?
I was born on July 29, 1883, in a small town called Dovia di Predapio in northeastern Italy. My full given name was Benito Amilcare Andrea Mussolini. My parents actually named me after some very specific historical figures: the Mexican reformer Benito Juarez and the Italian socialists Amilcare Cipriani and Andrea Costa.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
Growing up in Predapio, my family environment was heavily shaped by politics and hard work. My father, Alessandro, was a blacksmith and a highly passionate socialist journalist, while my mother, Rosa, was a strict and devout elementary school teacher. We lived under modest means, and our household was a constant melting pot of radical political theories and strong-willed personalities.
Was there a story behind your name or a nickname that stuck with you?
Aside from the political origins of my birth name, the name that defined my entire life and career came much later. It was Il Duce, which simply translates from Italian as the leader. It became more than just a nickname. It was the ultimate title used to project absolute power and authority over the nation.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
I was entirely restless, disobedient, and aggressive as a boy. I was a handful at home and an outright bully at school. Because the local village teachers couldn't manage my behavior, I was sent away to a strict boarding school run by the Salesian monks in Faenza. I proved even more troublesome there, to the point where I actually stabbed a fellow student with a penknife and attacked a monk who tried to discipline me. I was expelled and sent to another school in Forlimpopoli, but I couldn't stay out of trouble there either and was expelled again for assaulting another pupil with a penknife. Despite all of that, I managed to get good grades and completed enough schooling to qualify as an elementary school teacher in 1901.
What's a decision that changed everything for you but felt small at the time?
In 1902, I made the choice to leave Italy and move to Switzerland. At the time, it felt like a practical, everyday move to escape the lack of jobs in Italy and, quite frankly, to completely avoid my required military conscription. But it was that exact move that threw me headfirst into radical political organizing and forever changed the course of my life.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement, and what were the consequences?
My very first real run-in with law enforcement happened in July 1902 in Lausanne, Switzerland. I had run completely out of money, and a police officer found me sleeping under the Grand Pont Bridge. I was arrested on charges of vagrancy and spent time in a local police cell with nothing but my passport and 15 centimes to my name. It was a humiliating and traumatic experience.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
The realization truly hit when I took over as the editor of the National Socialist daily newspaper Avanti in 1912. And later, when I spearheaded the fascist march on Rome in October 1922. Seeing thousands of black shirts flooding the streets and the King of Italy refusing to declare martial law, effectively handing me the premiership, that was the moment the media frenzy solidified my place on the global stage.
Did fame make you more dangerous, or did it simply expose who you already were?
Fame and unchecked power completely stripped away any remaining restraint, exposing the violent, uncompromising instincts I had carried since childhood. Once I altered Italy's institutions between 1925 and 1929 to establish a total dictatorship, the platform allowed my aggressive nature to scale up from schoolyard fights to national and international oppression, viewing the individual as absolutely nothing compared to the power of the state.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person, society, or your own instincts?
Ultimately, it was my own instincts and my political miscalculations that betrayed me first. My decision to bind Italy's fate to Adolf Hitler by signing the Pact of Steel in 1939 was an internal mistake born of pride. That alignment dragged us into a devastating world war that my military simply could not handle, which eventually led my own Grand Council of Fascism and the king to turn on me and strip me of power.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
People might be surprised to learn that despite my loud, bombastic public persona, I prided myself on being an intellectual and a voracious learner. I taught myself both French and German, read massive amounts of philosophy, and even translated major philosophical works myself. Furthermore, when experts discussed complex technical or economic issues, I had the unique habit of sitting perfectly still and quiet for hours on end, just listening and absorbing information.
What did the public never understand about the pressure you were under at the time?
The public never quite grasped the frantic, exhausting chaos of trying to maintain total control over an entire population while simultaneously dealing with internal party factions. I often spoke about seeing a constant panorama of chaos and evil forces running rampant, and the sheer psychological weight of believing that I alone was responsible for holding the entire pyramid of the state together was immense.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
My career was heavily defined by my bitter rivalry with the Italian Socialist Party, the very group I used to lead. After they expelled me for supporting Italy's entry into World War I, they became my fiercest adversaries. Prominent socialists, like the deputy Giacomo Matteotti, who openly denounced our regime's electoral violence, represented the vocal opposition I felt compelled to crush to maintain control.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
Privately, I was fighting severe health issues, particularly agonizing stomach ulcers that frequently left me in intense physical pain and restricted my diet. Legally and strategically, I was also constantly fighting to maintain my grip on power through a complex web of secret police, propaganda, and paranoia, knowing that any sign of physical or political weakness could be fatal.
What was your darkest moment? And was there ever a time you wanted to walk away from it all?
My darkest moment came following the murder of Giacomo Matteotti in 1924. The resulting public outrage and political crisis pushed my back against the wall, and the entire regime teetered on the brink of collapse. I didn't want to walk away, but the isolation and the real threat of losing everything I had built made it an incredibly dark, high-stakes time.
What truth was hardest to escape when you were alone at night?
The hardest truth to face in the quiet hours was the reality that my grand vision of reviving the glory of the ancient Roman Empire was crumbling under the weight of an unsustainable war. Knowing that my absolute rule had bound the entire nation to a catastrophic alliance with Germany was a reality that became impossible to ignore.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
There was no formal, orderly courtroom trial for me. In April 1945, as Allied forces advanced, I attempted to flee toward Switzerland. On April 27th, near the town of Dongo, Italian communist partisans ambushed our convoy and discovered me hiding in a German military coat. I was arrested in the name of the Italian people. The very next day, on April 28, 1945, an improvised military tribunal by the National Liberation Committee summarily sentenced me to death without a formal trial.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you, and what part of your story has been exaggerated the most?
For a long time, international media circulated the highly exaggerated folklore that I was a genius economic savior who made the trains run on time and brought perfect, orderly prosperity to Italy. In reality, my regime's heavy-handed economic fascism created immense dysfunction, massive debt, and a highly suppressed society rather than a flawless, smoothly running empire.
What is the biggest misconception people have about your life?
The biggest misconception is that I was merely a clownish secondary puppet completely subservient to Adolf Hitler from the very beginning. People forget that I actually pioneered the modern fascist dictatorship and ran Italy for over a decade before Hitler even took power in Germany. Early on, he was the one looking to my regime for inspiration, not the other way around.
What would surprise people most about your ordinary human side?
Despite the public image of an unyielding, iron-willed dictator, my domestic life had ordinary strains. I had a deep love for classical music and was an avid violin player. I also retained quite a humble pride in my origins as a blacksmith's son, frequently trying to project myself as an ordinary man of the people who just happened to be bearing the weight of the nation.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
I passed away on April 28, 1945, in the small village of Giulino di Mezzegra, near Lake Como. I was executed by a partisan firing squad alongside my mistress, Clara Petacci. Following the shooting, our bodies were taken to the Piazzale Loreto in Milan, where an angry crowd severely abused the corpses before they were hung upside down from the roof of a petrol station.
Was your downfall caused more by your own flaws or by the world changing around you?
It was a combination of both, but fundamentally driven by my own flaws. My unchecked ego and insatiable desire for imperial expansion blinded me to the realities of my military weakness. The world was changing and polarizing into a massive global conflict. But it was my choice to jump into that fire that ensured my total ruin.
What past regrets did you carry with you to the end? If you could erase one decision from your life, would you? Or was it necessary to become who you were?
My greatest regret was tying Italy to Nazi Germany through the Pact of Steel and entering World War II. If I could erase that single choice, I absolutely would have, as it completely destroyed everything I had spent decades building. But my pride made me believe it was necessary to achieve global greatness.
What scared you more, getting caught, losing power, or being forgotten?
Losing power was always my ultimate fear. My entire psychological makeup and the philosophy I built were based on absolute authority and the total dominance of the state over the individual. Without power, I was nothing more than the vagrant under the bridge, which is why I clung to it until the absolute end.
When you look back now, do you see yourself as the villain, the hero, or something in between?
During my life, I genuinely viewed myself as the ultimate national hero, the strong man destined to lift Italy out of chaos and restore its ancient glory. But history has laid out a far different, brutal verdict, and I am fully aware that the world remembers me as an inept and tyrannical villain who brought ruin to his own people.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before we sign off?
Only that history is a harsh teacher. The absolute power I sought brought nothing but destruction in the end, and the spectacles of my life and death stand as a permanent warning about the cost of tyranny.
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.